Welcome everyone for the fourth and the final installment of the reading workshop being organized by Sehgal Institute. And on behalf of the Sehgal Institute of English, I, Dipjyoti Singh, am presenting this reading workshop now. We have already gone through the different techniques of reading. In our very first workshop, we talked about the ways we can implement these, and now we are practically trying to implement them. And this is the third part where we are trying to use the technique of reading the passage, reading the question, and then reading the passage again. So I'm going to start in a bit, and I would like you guys to attempt it with me. You'll be able to see the reading that I'm doing, and at the end, we will be checking our answers and seeing if the answers that we have marked are correct or not. All our handles are given here. If you have any questions regarding anything, any information you need, you can contact us on these handles, or you can get a recording of all the workshops that we give or all the online classes right on these handles. And while we do the reading, you'll also be able to attempt all the questions along with me. I'll be writing down the answers, and then at the end, we will check all the answers that we have attempted. So in this technique, I am going to read the passage, read the questions, and then read the passage again. We have already done two other techniques, like I have mentioned before. The very first one was where we tried to find the keywords, and the second one was where we looked at the question, and then after reading each of the question, we read the passage in accordance to whatever the sequence of the question was. Now this third technique is the most lengthy one, so let's just start and not waste any more time. Okay, so the passage is about stealth forces and weight loss. The various findings by public health experts, physicians, psychologists, geneticists, molecular biologists, and nutritionists are about as similar as an elephant's tusk is to its tail. Some say obesity is largely predetermined by our genes and biology, others attribute it to an overabundance of rice, soda, and screen sucking. Still others think we are fat because of viral infection, insulin, or the metabolic conditions we encountered in the womb. Everyone subscribes to their own little theory, says Robert Berkowitz, medical director of the Center of the Weight and Eating Disorder at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine. We are programmed to hang on to the fat we have, and some people are predisposed to create and carry more fat than others. Diet and exercise help, but in the end, solution will inevitably be more complicated than pushing away the plate and going for a walk. It's not as simple as you're fat because you're lazy, says Nikhil Durandar, an associate professor at Pennington Biomedical Research Center in Baton Rouge. Willpower is not a prerogative of thin people, it's distributed equally. Science may still be years away from giving us a miracle formula for fat loss. Hormone leptin is a crucial player in the brain's weight management circuitry. Some people produce too little leptin, others become desensitized to it, and when obese people lose weight, their leptin levels plummet along with their metabolism. The body becomes more efficient at using fuel and conserving fat, which makes it tough to keep the weight off. Obese dieters' bodies go into a state of chronic hunger of feeling Rudolph Liebel, an obesity researcher at Columbia University, compares to thirst. Some people might be able to tolerate chronic thirst, but the majority couldn't stand it, says Liebel. Is that a behavioral problem, a lack of willpower? I don't think so. The government has long espoused moderate daily exercise of the evening walk or take the stairs of variety, but that may not do much to budge the needle on the scale. A 150-pound person burns only 150 calories on half-hour walk, the equivalent of 2 apples. It's good for the heart, less for the gut. Radical changes are necessary, says Deirdre Berry, a psychologist at Howard Medical School and author of Wasteland. People don't lose weight by choosing the small fries or taking little walk every other day. Berry suggested taking a cue from members of the Nation Weight Control Registry, NWCR, a self-selected group of more than 5,000 successful weight losers, who have shed diets and averaged 66 pounds and kept it off 5.5 years. Some registry members lost weight using low-carb diets, some went low-fat, others eliminated refined foods. Some did it on their own, others relied on counseling. That said, not everyone can lose 66 pounds and not everyone needs to. The goal shouldn't be getting thin, but getting healthy. It's enough to whittle your weight down to the low end of your set range, says Jeffrey Friedman, a geneticist Rockefeller University. Losing even 10 pounds vastly decreases your risk of diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure. The point is to not give up just because you don't look like a swimming suit model. The negotiation between your genes and the environment begins on day one. Your optimal weight writ by genes appears to get edited early on by conditions even before birth. Inside the womb, if a woman has high blood sugar levels while she's pregnant, her children are more likely to be overweight or obese, according to a study of almost 10,000 mother-child pairs. Maternal diabetes may influence a child's obesity risk through a process called metabolic imprinting, says Teresa Hiller, an endocrinologist with Kaiser Permanente Center for Health Research and the study's lead author. The implication is clear. Weight might be established very early on, and obesity largely passed from mother to child. Numerous studies in both animals and humans have shown that a mother's obesity directly increases a child's risk of weight gain. The best advice for moms to be: get fit before you get pregnant. You'll reduce your risk of complications during pregnancy and increase your chances of having normal weight child. It's the 64,000 question. Which diet works? It got people wondering, isn't there a better way to diet? A study seemed to offer an answer. The paper compared two groups of adults, those who after eating secreted high levels of insulin, a hormone that sweeps blood sugar out of the bloodstream and promotes its storage as fast, and those who secreted less. Within each group, half were put on a low-fat diet and half on a low glycemic load diet. On average, the low insulin secreting group fared the same on both diets, losing nearly 10 pounds in the first 6 months, but they gained about half of it back by the end of the 18-month study. The high insulin group didn't do as well on the low fat plan, losing about 4.5 pounds and gaining back more than half by the end. But the most successful were the high insulin secretors on the low glycemic load diet. They lost nearly 13 pounds and kept it off. What if your fat is caused not by diet or genes but by germs, say a virus? It sounds like a sci-fi horror movie, but research suggests some dimension of the obesity epidemic may be attributable to infection by common viruses, says Dhurandhar. The idea of infectobesity came to him 20 years ago when he was a young doctor treating obesity in Bombay. He discovered that a local avian virus, SMAM1, caused chickens to die with organ damage, but also strangely with lots of abdominal fat. In experiments, Dhurandhar found SMAM1 infected chickens became obese on the same diet as uninfected ones, which stayed svelte. He later moved to the US and onto a bona fide human virus, adenovirus, 36, AD36 in the lab. Every species of animal Dhurandhar infected with the virus became obese. Chickens got fat, mice got fat. Even rhesus monkeys at the zoo that picked up the virus from the environment suddenly gained 15% of their body weight upon exposure. In his later studies, Dhurandhar has isolated a gene that, when blocked from expressing itself, seems to turn off the virus's fattening power. Stem cells extracted from fat cells and then exposed to AD36 reliably blossom into fat cells. But when stem cells are exposed to an AD36 virus with the key gene inhibited, the stem cells don't differentiate. The gene appears to be necessary and sufficient to trigger AD36 related obesity, and the goal is to use the research to create a sort of obesity vaccine. Now, I know that we started reading at 11:07 and we have ended the reading at 11:14, which means we took only 7 minutes to go through this whole passage. So the trick here with this technique is that you increase the speed of your reading and the speed of your understanding as well. So your comprehension should increase. The thing with this technique is that yes, it takes time to get used to it, but this is going to actually help you not only in IELTS but in your further studies as well. Because of course you are doing your IELTS because you want to move to a different country, and a lot of us, the majority of us go there as a student, right? And we have to go there and do our assignments. And we have to have the speed of reading where we are reading it all along, comprehending and understanding what we are reading. Not just reading it to say the words out loud, but to actually understand them. So it is important that you start reading newspapers out loud, that you start reading storybooks out loud, and that you get into the habit of it. After you have read it all, try to write a summary of it, which will help you understand what you have done or what you have read, right? So we have read the passage. We are going to move on to the questions now and attempt all of them. So I have read it. I have kind of memorized where I had read what information. Now I'm going to go into the questions and read the questions and then go back to the passage and read it again. to try and understand where the text was given. Okay, question 27 to 31 are based on the paragraphs that contain the following information. You may use any letter more than once, sorry. Okay, so this, whenever we get this type of a note there, you have to pay attention to the fact that there is a probability that you may actually have to repeat the answers that you have written. It is not compulsory that will happen, but if they have written it that way, then there is a chance that maybe the answers will actually be repeated. Now, question number 27. Evaluation on the effect of weight loss on different kinds of diet. The evaluation that was conducted on the effect of weight loss on different kind of diets. So the keywords here, of course, we are going to implement the last technique as well, is different kinds of diets and effect of those diets on weight loss. So I'm going to mark these so that when I come back to the question, I can know what the question stands for. An example of research which includes the relatives of the participants. Example, we are going to look for an example of a research. Okay, I'm going to highlight example where that includes the relatives of the participants that were a part of the research. An example of a group of people who did not regain weight immediately after weight loss. Again, example, we are supposed to look for an example. This could be an example out of research as well because the first one was a part of it. A group of people who did not regain weight. People who did not regain weight immediately after weight loss. I know, too big a keyword, but this is. Anyway, long-term hunger may appear to be acceptable to some of the participants during the period of losing weight program. Long-term hunger may appear. Long-term hunger may appear to be acceptable. May appear to be acceptable to the participants during the period of the weight loss program. A continuous experiment may lead to a practical application besides diet or hereditary resort. A continuous experiment may lead to a practical application besides diet or hereditary resort. A practical application besides diet or hereditary resort. Okay, I have read these questions. I'm going to go back to the passage. I'm going to just read the keywords of these questions. 27, effect of weight loss on different kinds of diet. So I'm going to go back to the passage and see in what paragraph they have talked about effects of weight loss. So in the very first paragraph, when we read it, they were talking about, because I have summarized it in my mind, right? I have already understood it, I have summarized it all. So I remember that in the very first paragraph, they are just introducing the willpower or the people's theories about weight loss and all, right? So this is just an introduction of the main topic. So I don't think the answer for the first question where they're talking about the effects of different kind of experiments on diets is going to be considered here. In the B paragraph, science may still be years away from giving us miracle formula. So weight loss, they are talking about the formulas that can be used, or rather the ways we can lose weight. Behavioral problem or a willpower? They're still asking a question in this paragraph. They have not marked anything, so I don't think they have not asserted anything, so I don't think this is going to be the answer. The government has long espoused moderate daily exercise. Okay, exercise, and I remember that when I was reading this, they were talking about different changes that are necessary to be made, and they're talking about the people that were successful and who were able to keep their weight off, but they're talking about exercise here. They are not really talking about diet in this paragraph. The negotiation between your genes and the environment. In this paragraph, they're talking about their genes and environment. Again, there is no mention of a diet, but rather genes and your environment or the surroundings that you get. C. E. It's the $64,000 question, which diet works? Here we see the mention of the word diet. So I'm going to read it this paragraph. We skimmed through all the other paragraphs because anything related to food or diet or any of the sort was not given. It got people wondering, isn't there a better way to diet? A study seemed to offer an answer. The paper compared two groups of adults, those who after eating secreted high levels of insulin, a hormone that sweeps blood sugar out of the bloodstream and promotes its storage as fat, and those who secreted less. Within each group, half were put on a low-fat diet and half on a low glycemic load diet. On average, the low insulin secreting group fared the same on both sides, losing nearly 10 pounds in the first 6 months, but they gained about half of it back by the end of the 18-month study. And okay, so in this paragraph, they are definitely talking about the effects of a diet that were conducted in an effects of weight loss on different kinds of diet, right? So the answer for 27 is supposed to be paragraph E, because they are talking about the effects of weight loss on different kinds of diet. So on the answer sheet that I have here, I am going to write the answer for E, for the answer for 27 as E. These are all the answers that we have marked before. See, we were all correct in the previous tests as well, previous attempts as well. Okay, we are going to go back to our questions and read the next question now. Question number 28. Example where relatives of the participants were mentioned. So I'm going to go back. We have already gone through multiple paragraphs where we were looking for the question number 1, right? In this question, we already talked that they're talking about various findings. In the next question, they're still questioning whether weight loss is a thing of a willpower or is it a behavioral problem. In the C paragraph, they're only talking about exercising. In the D paragraph, they're talking about genes and environment. And genes come from your relatives. So I'm going to read this paragraph because I'm going to relate with the fact that the question asks for it. Now, the negotiation between your genes and the environment begins on day 1. Your optimal weight writ by genes appears to get edited early on by conditions even before birth inside the womb. If a woman has high blood sugar levels while she's pregnant, her children are more likely to be overweight or obese, according to a study almost 10,000 mother-child pairs. See, there is a relationship shown here, a mother and a child. Mother and a child are still relatives, and the question is the same, that is asking an example of a research which includes the relatives of the participant. Relative of participant, mother was the participant and her child was the relative there, which means that the answer for D could be for the answer for 28 could very much be D. So in my answer sheet, I am going to write D. Now I'm going to go back to the test and look at question number 29. Example where people who did not regain weight immediately after weight loss. When we were reading passage number C, they talked about exercising, and I mentioned that they were talking about successful weight losers, right? And 66 pounds kept it off. See? Here, they did not gain weight immediately after. A self-selected group, read in the middle, I'm going to highlight it for you guys. A self-selected group of more than 5,000 successful weight losers who have shed diets an average of 66 pounds and kept it off 5.5 years, which means they did not gain it back immediately. The answer for 29, they did not regain weight immediately, is supposed to be C. So in my answer sheet for question 29, I'm going to mention C. Going back to the questions. 30. Long-term hunger may appear to be acceptable to some of the participants during the period of losing weight program. Long-term hunger. Okay, I do not remember the location of this particular question. So I remember that I have read till E. I'm going to skim over F now. What if your fat is caused not by diet or genes? Okay, they are completely abandoning the concept of diet or hunger or food being related to your obesity. So that means this paragraph cannot be an answer for that. And for G, later moved to US into bona fide virus. Okay, this is good experiment, so this cannot be that either. E, we already know they're talking about diet, so I can reread this. I had read till here. Within each group, I will start reading from the middle because I had already read the first part of it. On average, the low insulin secreting group fared the same on both diets, losing nearly 10 pounds in the first 6 months, but they gained about half of it back by the end of 18-month study. The high insulin group did not do as well on the low fat plan, losing about 4.5 pounds and gaining back more than half by the end. But the most successful were the high insulin secretors on the low glycemic load diet. They lost nearly 13 pounds and kept it off. They are not talking about the statement that the question is mentioning. Long-term hunger may be acceptable to participants during the time of weight loss. So I'm going to go back and go to the previous passages. E is not the answer. In the previous one, they're talking about genes and environment. That means diet is not mentioned here as well. In C paragraph, they're talking about exercising, about the effects of exercising on your body, like they have mentioned about the diabetes, heart disease, and high blood pressure. I'm going to go back to the previous paragraphs now. For B paragraph, science may still be years away from giving us miracle formula for weight loss, for fat loss. Okay, they are talking about fat loss. At least hormone leptin is a crucial player in the brain's weight management circuitry. Some people reduce too little leptin, others become desensitized to it. And when obese people lose weight, their leptin levels plummet. Okay, they are talking about losing weight. So I'm going to continue reading. The body becomes more efficient at using fuel and conserving fat, which makes it tough to keep the weight off. Obese titers bodies go into a state of chronic hunger, a feeling Rudolph labeled an obesity researcher at Columbia University compares to thirst. Some people might be able to tolerate chronic thirst, but the majority couldn't stand it. Is that a behavioral problem or a lack of willpower? See, the question is saying a long time hunger may appear to be acceptable to some of the participants during the period of losing weight program. They might find it acceptable to feel long time hunger, and the paragraph is mentioning the same, that some people might be able to tolerate it, which means they might be able to accept that they are hungry. So the answer for 30 is supposed to be in paragraph number B. Some people might be able to tolerate chronic thirst, but the majority can't stand it. Whether it is thirst or hunger, I'm going to consider this the answer. So the answer for question number 30 is B. Going back to our questions. 31. A continuous experiment may lead to a practical application besides diet or hereditary result. A continuous experiment may lead to a practical application. A practical application besides diet or hereditary result. Now, when we went back, when we were looking at the paragraphs again, we realized this is just introducing the paragraph A is just introducing the whole passage. It is not talking about anything in particular. Paragraph B, on the other hand, is talking about weight loss, but in terms of just people experiencing weight loss and what the consequences of that weight loss could be. C paragraph is talking about exercising. D paragraph is talking about genes, which is a synonym of hereditary factors. So D is not the answer because the question is mentioning that we are going to keep aside hereditary and other factors. Sorry, hereditary and diet, the food, right? Okay. So, and in the E paragraph, they're talking about diet, which means we are not going to consider this as well. But the very first line of F paragraph, what if your fat is caused not by diet or genes, but by germs, say a virus, right? Which means the paragraph F is talking about some other factor other than genes and diet, other than hereditary and diet. So I am going to mark the answer for question number 31 as F. Mark that because a continuous experiment may lead to a practical application. So a particular mention of a continuous experiment is also important. Okay, let's not run headfirst into it and read if they are talking about a continuous experiment. But this is the area where I'm going to find my answer, I'm sure. It sounds like a sci-fi horror movie, but research suggests some dimension of the obesity epidemic may be attributable to infection by common viruses, says Dhurandhar. The idea of infecto obesity came to him 20 years ago when he was a young doctor treating obesity in Bombay. He discovered that a local avian virus, SMAM, one, caused chickens to die. Second, with organ damage, but also strangely with lots of abdominal fat. In experiments, Dhurandhar found. Okay. I'm going to go back. Practical application, continuous experiment. He later moved to US and onto a bona fide virus, viral human virus. In the lab, every species of infective virus became obese. Environment suddenly gained 15% of their body weight upon exposure. In his latest studies, Dhurandhar has isolated a gene blocked from expressing itself seems to turn off the virus's fattening power. Stem cells extracted from fat cells and then exposed to AD36 reliably blossom into fat cells. But when stem cells are exposed to an AD36 virus with the key gene inhibited, the stem cells don't differentiate. The gene appears to be necessary and sufficient to trigger AD36 result. The goal is to use the research to create a sort of obesity vaccine. Okay, this paragraph is actually talking about the constant experiment that Dhurandhar is implementing to try and find whether there's a human virus, which he probably has found, which has an effect on obesity. And the last line of this passage is particularly mentioning that the goal is to use the research to create a sort of obesity vaccine, which is a practical implication rather than just using diet or hereditary result. So the answer for 31 is going to be G, because this is fully answering what is mentioned. 32. Question, you may use any letter more than once. They're mentioning that again, which means probably I'm going to consider the fact that we may be able to use one answer for two statements probably. Match each finding with the correct researcher. Okay, there must be a list of researcher given, that is here. The trick with this particular type of a question is that you go back to the passage and you highlight the name of each researcher that has been mentioned here. Robert Berkowitz, Rudolf Liebel, Nikhil Dhurandhar, Deirdre Beret, Jeffrey Friedman, and Teresa Hillier. So I'm going to go back to the passage, try and find wherever the name of a researcher is given, started from the back. I'm going to highlight Dhurandhar. I'm going to highlight Dhurandhar again. And here Dhurandhar has been mentioned one more time. In the previous paragraph, Dhurandhar has been mentioned, which means the F paragraph is completely based on what Dhurandhar considers, right? Teresa Hillier is mentioned here, the name of a researcher is given, so I'm going to highlight that. And then, see, these are inverted commas, which means there's going to be a name of someone. See, there is another researcher. Are there any more inverted commas? No, but I found another name, Jeffrey Friedman. I'm going to highlight that as well. Says Liebel after inverted commas. Liebel has been mentioned again. I'm going to go back. Any other? Rudolf Liebel was the name, so I'm going to just highlight his first name as well. In the very first paragraph, let me see if there are any names that are mentioned. Nikhil Dhurandhar is mentioned here as well. And there are other inverted commas, says Robert Berkowitz. So this guy has been mentioned here as well. I'm going to go back to the questions now. Okay, a person's weight is determined by the interaction of his or her DNA and the environment. So we remember in what paragraph the mention of genes and the environment or the surroundings was mentioned. That was in paragraph number D. The negotiation between your genes and environment begins on day one, right? So they are talking about the interaction or the negotiation of genes in environment, DNA or environment, synonymous. Teresa Hillier is the only name that is given here. Let me go back and see on what number Teresa Hillier is given. So for question number 32, I am going to mark Teresa Hillier because that is the only name in that paragraph, right? So it is a safe bet. I am going to mark F for question number 32. 33. Pregnant mothers who are overweight may risk their fetus in gaining weight. Again, in that same paragraph, we read about mothers and their child, and if a mother is pregnant, her children are more likely. See, levels while she's pregnant, her children are more likely to be overweight or obese according to a study. This study was also conducted by the same person, because this is the only name that is in the paragraph when we went through it. So the answer for question number 33 is also going to be F. Question number 34. The aim of losing weight should be keeping healthy rather than being attractive. When we were reading the passage again, see, this is how reading it once before helps, because you are able to retain where you read something and what you read. In this paragraph, it is mentioned in the very last line, the point is to not give up just because you don't look like a swimsuit model. And that is what the question is also saying, that the aim of losing weight should be keeping healthy rather than being attractive. Just because you don't look like someone who is considered socially more attractive does not mean that you're not healthy. The point of losing weight should be to become healthier, not to be attractive to other people. This is probably said by Jeffrey Friedman. Let me just confirm once. On what point is Jeffrey Friedman mentioned? He is mentioned on E for 2034. I am going to mark question number 35. Small changes in lifestyle will not help in reducing much weight. Small changes in lifestyle will not help. We have to make bigger changes. Small changes cannot help. This is said by, okay, in the same paragraph that we marked the previous one, the statement is given. Radical changes are necessary where the inverted commas are there. So I'm just going to skim. I'm just skimming through because I have marked the names of people right where the inverted commas are there. Inverted commas generally, or mostly always, highlight the sentences that are in inverted, that are being said by someone. That is a part of a speech, right? So Deirdre Beret mentioned that radical changes are necessary, which also means that people, and he also says that people don't lose weight by choosing the small fries or taking a little walk around. Okay, which means that the answer for 35, that is saying that small changes in lifestyle will not help, you have to make more radical changes. So the answer for 35 is supposed to be Deirdre Beret, I think. Yeah. So I'm going to mark 35 as question number 36. Researchers can be divided into different groups with their own point of view about weight loss. Now, this question is particularly talking about researchers and their point of view. In the last paragraph, we know they were talking about a practical implication of an experiment. In the F paragraph, they were talking about Dhurandhar, who was just trying to understand whether if obesity is caused just by diet or genes or by obesity as well. Only one researcher is mentioned there. In each paragraph, they're talking about whether diets work, and there are no statements because when we were looking through it, no one was mentioned. In the D paragraph, the only experimenter that is there is Teresa Hillier, and she is talking about the genes and environment, but any other researchers mentioned are not there. In C paragraph, on the other hand, two researchers are mentioned, but there has not been any comparison that has been made within the views of these two researchers. And in B paragraph, they are talking about hunger and the implications. So I am going to go to a paragraph now because I have marked the names of the researchers there as well, but no other person has been left to be marked. Okay, there is a statement here in inverted commas. Everyone subscribes to their own little theory. Okay, yes, this relates to the question. Researchers can be divided into different groups with their own point of view about weight loss. They can be divided into different groups. They all have their own thought about the weight loss. And even this statement is particularly mentioning that everyone subscribes to their own little theory. They all have their own set of mind. They all have their own theory. So the answer for question number 36 is supposed to be, let me go back and look at the name, Robert Berkowitz. The answer is supposed to be Robert Berkowitz. So the answer for 36 is supposed to be A. So I am going to mark question number 36 as A. Only 4 more questions are left. Okay, question number 37. These are fill in the blanks. In Bombay clinic, a young doctor who came up with the concept infecto-obesity believed that the obesity is caused by a kind of virus. For years, he conducted experiments on blank. Okay, so they are talking about experiments and that it is caused by a kind of a virus. When we were reading, we can remember that in the F paragraph was where they abandoned all the theories about hereditary or diet, and in F paragraph they started talking about whether this obesity could be caused by germs or a virus, right? So I'm going to go to F paragraph and see if they are talking about anything that the continuous experiments were done on. I'm going to reread this. What if your fat is caused not by diet or genes, but by germs, is a virus? It sounds like a sci-fi horror movie, but research suggests that some dimension of the obesity epidemic may be attributed to infection by common viruses, says Dhurandhar. The idea of infecto-obesity came to him 20 years ago when he was a young doctor treating obesity in Bombay. He discovered that a local avian virus, SMAM, one caused chickens to die, second with organ damage, but also strangely with lots of abdominal fat. Chickens have been mentioned here. The experiments were done on chickens once. In experiments, this is a plural, which means multiple experiments. Dhurandhar found that SMAM1 infected chickens because became obese on the same diet as uninfected ones, which stayed swift. Multiple experiments were done on chickens. He later moved to US. Bona fide human virus was found in the lab. Every species infected with virus became obese. Chickens got fat, mice got fat, and even monkeys. Chickens are mentioned again. So for the answer for 37, I'm going to write chickens because chickens are the ones that have been mentioned constantly. So the answer for 37 is chicken. 38, question number 38. Finally, later, as he moved to America, he identified a new virus name of the virus. When we were reading, we read the name of the virus onto a bona fide human virus, that is adenovirus 36 or AD36. It is in bracket, it is a short form of the name, it is an abbreviation. So I am not going to spend much time and just write AD36 because that would be correct as well. AD36. The answer for 39. Although there seems no way to eliminate the virus till now, a kind of blank can be separated as to block the effectiveness of the virus. Something that can be separated to block the effectiveness of the virus, to diminish how strong the virus is. The research is mentioned in G paragraph, so I'm just going to read from here. Picked up the virus from the environment, certainly gained 15%. In latest studies, has isolated a gene that when blocked from expressing itself seems to turn off the virus's fattening power. See, right in the next sentence, I'm going to highlight it for you guys. In this sentence only, they're talking about when a gene is separated, the power of the virus diminishes. So the answer for 39 is 39, right? Yeah, the answer for 39 is probably genes. I'm going to write here. The last question is left. In the future, the doctor is aiming at developing a new blank which might effectively combat against virus. A new something that might effectively combat against virus. I'm going to go back to the questions, to the passage, sorry. A new something that may be able to help against the virus. Okay, the very last line of the passage, the goal is to use the research to create a sort of obesity vaccine. They are trying to make a medicine, a vaccine that can help you combat against the virus. So the answer for the last one is supposed to be vaccine. Okay, so we have gone through all the answers, we have gone through all the questions. Let us go to the answer key and check if our answers are correct. The sequence of questions 27 to 31 is supposed to be E, D, C, B, G. And we have marked E, D, C, B, and G. Our answers for these questions are correct. I have marked F is correct as well, but I'll check if F is correct for 32. Okay. From questions 32 to 36, the sequence is supposed to be F, F, E, D, A. Okay, 32 is F, 33 F, E, D, A. Yes, that is also the sequence that we have marked, so I'm going to mark them correct as well. We have written chickens, AD36, genes, and vaccine. The answer key says chickens, adenovirus 36 or AD36, genes, and vaccine, which means the answer for all of them are correct. Okay. Hi. So you guys have seen that we have done this whole reading all together, and all the answers that we marked using all the three techniques have been correct. So I would like you guys to try and implement these techniques. Tell us whichever one works for you the best, and practice and practice, practice, practice. Practice is the only thing that is going to help you in IELTS as well as in reading. There might be a lot of tips and tricks that we can implement, but if we don't try those tips and tricks, then we won't be able to attempt all the readings. Thank you very much for joining us. Please be sure to follow us on our handles that have been mentioned behind me, and we will meet very soon again. Thank you again for joining us. Goodbye.